So we're holding in Tehilim, chapter 137 and 138, two relatively small chapters. I'm just going to give you a brief introduction, especially to chapter 137. It is somewhat known. This is a chapter that talks about the revenge that will be coming on Bavel and Edom. Bavel being the Babylonians who destroyed the first temple, Edom, the Edomite Empire, Rome, that destroyed the second temple. When you read this chapter, especially the last verse, it appears to be very cruel revenge. People misunderstand what it means, revenge. The Torah, after all, says we're not to take revenge. If somebody commits a wrong against us, get back at him, get even. That's not nice. We remember at all times that everything is mishamayim. If something happens to us, it was meant to be. We're being tested. How are we going to react? So to stoop down to the level of the person who acted in a bad way against us is a sin in itself. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be like him. Let Hashem judge. Let Hashem take care of it. And after all, we don't know exactly what is going on in the person's mind. It's very difficult for us to be a judge in general. It doesn't mean that you should ask God to punish him either. That's also wrong. Hashem knows the circumstances, and Hashem knows exactly what is going on in people's minds, so leave it up to him. Obviously, one can defend himself. Yes, you need to protect yourself and so forth, but if things happen, somebody says something not nice to us, somebody does something not nice to us, even though we were kind to them, and we feel we were betrayed, it doesn't mean that you should do to them what they did to you. So we're somewhat familiar with this, even though people are very weak in this area. But when you're somewhat familiar, it does make some sense. And here, when it comes to this chapter of Tehilim and other portions in the Torah and in the prophecies, we see just the opposite. We see that there is such a concept called revenge. El Nekamot Hashem. Hashem is a vengeful God. And it's difficult to understand. How do we reconcile that with the prohibition in the Torah itself of lo tikom velo titor? Don't bear a grudge, don't take revenge. So we must understand that Hashem is different, of course. He created the world. He's completely aware where everything is, what people did. And there is the attribute of justice that is part of creation, part of how Hashem manages the world. The attribute of justice means that things do need to be evened out at some point. And that brings in the topic of reincarnation, which I speak about separately. What is reincarnation for? Why is there a need for the soul to come back time after time for some sort of rectification of a previous life? As they say in English, let bygones be bygones. Let's just forget about what happened in the past. No. The attribute of justice works in this manner, that things have to be evened out at some point. So life is short, and things may not be evened out in one's lifetime, so they have to be done in another lifetime. Of course, there's something called schar ve'onesh in the upper world, reward and punishment, but there is an afterlife. But here we're talking about Gilgul, reincarnation, which was a concept that not many Jews were familiar with, because it was mostly in the Kabbalah that it is mentioned. When they did become informed about it, they were surprised, because it's not mentioned in the Talmud. Because it's something that is very, very mystical. We don't have all the information of how it works. We just know that it is necessary. It is necessary for the purpose of rectification. So here we're talking about rectification on an individual level. But there's also something called rectification on a global level, or on a national level. So even though you may say, wait a minute, those nations in the past, they're gone, aren't they? All the evil that they did, they're gone. They may be in Gehenna, but they're gone. Not necessarily. They can be reincarnated, or their descendants. The descendants, if they acted a similar way to their forefathers, they're going to be punished. And the reason for that is because we need to see it. We need to see something happen to those people, to those nations that oppressed us. Otherwise, we're going to say, wait a minute, where is law and order? Where is justice? God, who supposedly is involved in everything that happens, is aware of everything, isn't he going to do something about it? So sometimes we don't live long enough to see it. But if you read throughout history, you will see, wow, look at this nation. They were at the top of the world, and now they're amongst the poorest nations. They're not what they were before. They don't have the power. They're no longer an empire. So you're able to analyze, you're able to see a lot what happened to those nations, the major earthquakes, the major disasters. They were taken over by others. What happened to them in the past? Most people don't do that. They don't learn the whole history of every single nation to see exactly what happened to the people who live there, to the inhabitants of that land. But Hashem keeps a record of everything. That is why it says about Hashem, Zocher kol hanishkachot. He remembers all that which is forgotten. Forgotten by human beings, perhaps, but not by Him. Everything is recorded. So when we head upstairs, there's a ledger where everything that we did is recorded, the good and the bad. And the same is true with nations. Everything is recorded. And there will come Judgment Day. So when we talk about Yom Adin, when we talk about Judgment Day, we're talking about in the end of days, Zaharit Hayamim. Even though there's always Judgment Days, there are all kinds of natural phenomena, which is part of the attribute of justice, whether it's a hurricane or a tornado or a major flood. All of this is natural, we call it, but it's all from above. Anything that is so destructive, that takes a toll on so many human lives, doesn't happen by chance. So we're continuously reinforced in our mind about this hashgacha. Hashgacha, divine providence, is a very important concept in Judaism. There's hashgacha klalit and hashgacha pratit. General hashgacha and individual hashgacha for individual people. So in this chapter we will see a little bit of that hashgacha, how it comes back a couple thousand years later. And we say to ourselves, wow, this happened so long ago, what they did, and look what is happening to these people right now. Could it be related? And the answer is probably, yeah, it could be. So this chapter, the segula for this chapter is a very interesting segula. The power is to remove la'asir et hasinah. There's some hatred, somebody doesn't like you, or perhaps you don't like someone. I'm not sure which one it is. It could be both. It's to remove hatred. So it's interesting that it has to do with this particular chapter that talks a little bit about what they perpetrated against the Jewish people, the Babylonians and the Romans. What's interesting about this chapter is also that this is completely divinely inspired. Even though the entire Tehilim is divinely inspired, this one is especially so because David HaMelech lived before the temple. And many things that he says relate to the temple in the future. So obviously he's seeing here some sort of vision or something is being told to him about what is going to happen in the future. This is about the Jewish people being led into exile, into the Babylonian exile after the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians. And the temple is destroyed, very few Jews remain in Israel, and the vast majority go to Bavel. And in Bavel, they remain for 70 years. When the time comes to rebuild the second temple, they don't all return, only a small group. Many of them went to Persia. They made roots already in that area, that region. They started their businesses, and they're 70 years removed from Israel. They're not so excited about going back. And that was a shame that not so many people went back. Same thing with the Yemenite Jews. However, with the 10 lost tribes, they left about 135 years before the destruction of the temple. They were exiled by the Assyrian Empire. They're only going to come back when Mashiach comes. So we're still missing 10 tribes. I have a whole big lecture about that, a fascinating lecture about where those tribes are. And we're looking forward to the day when they all join us again. So this is a short exile, but it's a very difficult exile. Not only because the Babylonians were very cruel themselves, but because the temple is destroyed, and as a result of all of that, there is a little bit of assimilation too, intermarriage going on. So look, even though we just had a temple, we just had the destruction of the temple, we had all these prophecies, and they see for themselves that those prophets that were telling them that the destruction is coming, were telling the truth. And then there were other ones who were false prophets who were saying, okay, it's good, it's okay, don't worry. He's so pessimistic, this Yirmiyahu, who was giving all this difficult prophecies about what's coming. but now they see it's true. So you will see a little bit of remorse, a little bit of teshuvah, a little bit of repentance in the words of the Leviim. The Leviim, as you know, they were in charge of singing and playing the instruments in the Bet HaMikdash, so they were very close to the holy, to the Bet HaMikdash. They and the Kohanim. So they have reason to mourn because they don't have that job right now. They can therefore relate to it a lot more. So this chapter deals specifically with that group more than everyone else. Al Naharot Bavel. Sham yashavnu gan bachinu bezochenu et Zion. By the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept as we remembered Zion. Which rivers, by the way, do you know? The Prat and the Hiddekel, the Euphrates and the Tigris River. These are the rivers that go through Bavel, Mesopotamia. So we're sitting by the rivers and we cried. We wept as we remembered Zion. So the fact that they are weeping says something, right? The very important idea here being expressed, that finally they're weeping for something that they should be crying about. How come they didn't do that before? All right, so what exactly are they doing? They're just crying? They're sitting and doing nothing? What's the purpose of crying now? So, it says here, Bezochrenu et Zion. We remember Zion. In other words, we remember what we used to do there, and here we can no longer do that. So the fact that they can no longer do what they did is in itself indicative that they feel bad. They didn't have those kind of feelings before. Sometimes what happens is that only after the fact, when you don't have what you have, you miss it. That could also be true with somebody who passed away. When he was alive, you didn't appreciate him as much. And after he leaves, you feel how empty it feels not to have him around. So it could be with people, those feelings, and it could also be with Zion, with the Bet HaMikdash. That's what we're told, that these are the feelings that we're supposed to have and express, not just on Tisha B'Av when we commemorate the destruction, but every day. We have it in the Siddur, in our prayer book. We look forward to the day when our eyes will see you return to Zion, when Hashem returns and rebuilds the temple. So we need reminders because people simply forget, they are distracted, they're working for a living, they don't think about Zion, especially if they're not there. They're living in Anchorage, Alaska. Yes, there are Jews living there too. Why should he think about Zion? Unless he's being reminded that you belong there. You once upon a time had the temple. You know what that is? So this is fresh right after the destruction, and they, feel very, very bad about what happened now that they've reached that destination. Bavel. Now, Yirmiyahu went with them initially, the prophet Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah. But then he decided to go back to be with the remnants of the Jews who were still in Israel. There were some left behind. And when they saw him living, he was a leader, they began to cry. So this crying here is not just for what happened, it's also because Yirmiyahu is leaving them. So Yirmiyahu says, that's interesting that you're crying now. Had you cried like that before the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, very good chance that it would not have been destroyed. That's what Hashem wanted to see. That you feel bad about your deeds, that you repent, and so forth. Why are you crying now after the fact? It's a little bit too late. What you're doing right now, this is what you should have done back then. However, they're still very, very close, of course, in their feelings, in their attachment to the Bet HaMikdash. Look at Pasuk Bet. How do they express that attachment in the morning? Al aravim betocha talinu kinorotenu. There upon the willows, again, around the rivers, there were, I guess, some willows. We hung our harps. In other words, we don't want to play. We're not in the mood of doing that. Even though they were being asked by the Babylonians, play for us. No. How could we do that? How can we play here for the enemy? If you do that, we're going to be giving them the sense of, yes, you are victorious, you're strong, you succeeded in what you did. We don't want to give them that feeling by playing and going along with them. So therefore we hung it upon the willows and the trees. We don't want to have anything to do with those musical instruments here in Bavel. So he continues to explain in verse 3 that this is exactly what the Babylonians asked of them to do. כי שם שאלונו שובנו דברי שיר ותוללנו שמחה שירו לנו משיר ציון. Our captors, שובנו, they demanded of us songs, and those who scorned us, tolaleno means those that made fun of us, they said, let's have a party, simcha, let's rejoice. Shiru lanu b'shir Tzion, therefore sing to us of the songs of Tzion. Let's hear your music. Jewish music, they say, is lebedikas, as it's called in Yiddish, very lively. Let's hear your music. And the Midrash says something incredible, that they bit their fingers off, the edges of the fingers, so that they shouldn't be able to play. That's how bad they felt. How could we sing to the pagans, to the idolaters, to the Avodah Zarah? Because that's what they would be doing. So they preferred to bite their fingers, they preferred to do that, and not ever come to play those instruments for the Babylonians. And they expressed it further. No way. Pasuk Dalet. Ech nashir et shir Adonai al admat nechar. How can we sing the song of Hashem on alien soul? Nechar is alien, strange, foreign. How can we do it here? We had a Bet HaMikdash just recently. There, yes. But here, how can we do it? It would be disrespectful of us, the holy songs, the holy tunes, to play it over here. All right. So as a result of all that, since we ourselves are not in Zion, since we do not have the Bet HaMikdash, can we play today here? Look at Pasuk Hey. Pasuk Hey is a very powerful Pasuk that a chatan, a groom, says these words underneath his chuppah. And this will pretty much tell us how we need to deal with music and how we need to deal with joy and dance outside of Israel these days. If I forget you, Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its strength, its dexterity. Very powerful pasuk. How could we forget Yerushalayim? Now, why does the Chatan, the groom, say that underneath the chuppah as he's getting married? Towards the end, he puts his foot on the glass, he breaks the glass, says those words. What's going on exactly? The day of one's wedding is supposedly the happiest day of one's life. That's when he's about to build a home. But we remember at that point that Hashem's home is not built. How can our joy be complete when Hashem's joy is not complete? Hashem's throne is not complete because Amalek still has too much power. Evil, Amalek, right? We see it till today. There's a lot of evil out there. So that means that Hashem's throne, Kavyachol, so to say, is not complete. So how can we be happy? Therefore the rabbis remind us, our happiness is incomplete. It's incomplete until Mashiach comes. So we remind ourselves. How do we remind ourselves? Just by breaking a glass. Ever since the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, the rabbis instituted various customs to remind us that we should not have a complete simcha. Women wear less jewelry, supposed to wear less jewelry. There's no music at the time of your dinner. A wedding is something else. Now, in Jerusalem itself, there are some communities that don't have any music, even at a wedding, except for drums. In other words, just a little bit. But it's not a whole band. Those who do want to have a whole musical band, they go outside of the city of Jerusalem. So they can have the music, because according to that custom, it applies only in the city of Yerushalayim. Either way, there are various customs, and all of that has to do with remembering Yerushalayim. You build a new house from scratch. Not that you bought a house that's already ready from somebody else that used it. You build it. You leave a little square at the entrance or somewhere that is not painted, that is not finished. Zecher lechurban Yerushalayim. This is to remember the destruction of Jerusalem. So we need to be reminded. Yes, so we do all kinds of things to remind ourselves. So we have various customs. I just gave you a couple. to remember the destruction of Yerushalayim, so that we should continuously mourn. And it's not just to mourn, it's to ask Hashem, to pray to Hashem that He should soon rebuild it. So that is what is being said in verse 5. What were to happen, God forbid, if I forget, Tishkach yamini, let my right hand lose or forget its dexterity, its koach. Yamin, the right is the stronger one, usually, unless you're a lefty. So that is a form of saying, if I forget that, I might as well lose all my power, all my koach. I would never want to do that. That's what we're saying. These words, Imeshkachech, is being said for a good reason too. Why say that? Should I forget? Or if I forget you, why say it in that way? Because there is a prophecy that says, that Hashem says, Hatishkach isha ulam menachem ben bitna. Is it possible for a woman, a mother, to forget her baby? The one that she gave birth to? Usually not. Most mothers love their babies, except for those few that for some reason they throw them in the garbage cans. I'm not talking about those kind of cases, unfortunately. There are people like that too. But ordinarily a mother is very attached to her child. In the same way Hashem says in the prophecies, in the same way a woman would not forget her baby. I will not forget you. I will not forget you. So it may have appeared that I have abandoned you, it may have appeared that I didn't look after you, but I promise you that I did not forget you. There's another beautiful prophecy that says, Anochi ashber velo olid, also beautiful words. Will I bring a woman to labor and not have her give birth? In other words, have you ever seen that? Usually a woman that goes to labor, right, she's ready to give birth. And the baby comes out, hopefully healthy, right? So Hashem says, you think I'm going to put you through labor and not go through the whole thing? You're going to give birth. In other words, if there's labor, in other words, there's pain and suffering leading up to Mashiach, which is labor pains, you don't think I'm going to finish the job properly? And there's going to be a birth? There's going to be Mashiach? In other words, if I started with stage 1, stage 2, there's going to be a stage 3 too. So as soon as you see those signs, you should know, I'm keeping my promise. Don't think that this is just pain. What's going to be the end of it? The end of it is going to be that there's going to be a birth. But we're hoping that it should be a natural birth and not a C-section. That's the way I always explain the tribulations of Mashiach. It could be through a C-section, which is an operation, which is very painful. We want it to be a natural birth. And Mitzvah Hashem, hopefully any day, we'll see it. So that is the idea here. We're using similar words. Would I forget? God forbid. If I do, my right hand should be forgotten. What else should happen? God forbid if I forget. Tidbak leshoni lechiki, im lo eskerechi, im lo aleh et Yerushalayim al rosh simchati. Let my tongue cleave or stick to my palate if I will not remember you. It's a way of saying, let my mouth be silenced. Let me lose the ability of speech. Let me not be able to talk at all if I do not remember you. Why say it in this way? Because we're talking about remembering Yerushalayim in various ways. In deed, in words. So it's giving an example of, God forbid, what should happen to a person who does forget. We don't want to forget. So here it says, Im lo eskerechi. My tongue should cleave if I will not remember you. If I will not bring to mind Jerusalem during my greatest joy. So here he's adding this extra words, bring Jerusalem, or mention Jerusalem during my greatest joy, which is a wedding. In other words, how could I not? How could I not remember Yerushalayim? How could I not feel bad that here my home is about to be built, and it's a beautiful home with furniture and everything, and Hashem's home is not built yet. There's an interesting Gemara that says that one reason, there's several, but one of the reasons why there are earthquakes from time to time is that Hashem looks down to the world and He sees all these skyscrapers, all of these buildings that human beings have built, and says all their homes are built, all their buildings are up, and mine is not, and the world shakes. In other words, why don't you do something about my home? So again, this is just one idea, but there's other reasons of why there are earthquakes. So here we need to continuously remind ourselves of Yerushalayim and bring it to mind during our greatest joy. We have our festivities, and how do we bring it to mind? Let's say it's circumcision. Let's say it's a bar mitzvah. It's not a wedding, so there's no glass to be broken. How are you going to bring it to mind? Anybody want to suggest anything? Here it says not to forget. Okay, not to forget means to talk about it, to warn, whatever you can do to warn, but to bring it to mind. What I think, I haven't seen anybody say this, but I think it's a very important point. Rabbis tell us be very careful when you are celebrating a simcha and poor people come and want to sit down, they don't have a meal, or they want to collect some money, let them. Be very careful not to refuse them, and definitely be extra careful not to humiliate them at your own simcha. These are children of Hashem too. They are, in a sense, a churban. In other words, their life is in pieces, if we can say it that way. They're miserable, they're in pain. So by helping them, by uplifting them, we're helping to rebuild Yerushalayim. We're helping to rebuild the Bet HaMikdash. Rabbis tell us whoever makes the Chatan V'Kala happy, Kilu Bana Echad Mechorvot Yerushalayim, it's like he built one of the, or part of the destruction of Jerusalem. In other words, by doing certain deeds that relate to selfless love, Ahavat Chinam, we are correcting the Sinat Chinam, the baseless hatred which destroyed the Bet HaMikdash. So helping the poor, letting them sit down and eat, giving tzedakah. Giving tzedakah is a very important idea of chesed, of acts of kindness, that is the antidote, perhaps we can call it, of the Sinat Chinam. That is what will cure the baseless hatred. That will bring people closer to each other and unite them and help us rebuild Yerushalayim as a result. Okay, so these were the Pesukim relating to the destruction and how we remember them. The last three verses deal with the revenge that I mentioned earlier. Pasuk Zayin. Zechor Adonai livnei Edom et yom Yerushalayim ha'omrim aru ad ha'yesod ba. So remember Hashem against the Edomites. Edom, which is really the Roman Empire today, the day of the destruction of Yerushalayim, when they said, raise it to the very foundation. The word aru means to completely raise it. Edom, the Roman Empire, which today is not just one nation, it's many, many nations. What's interesting about this verse here is we're asking Hashem to remember. Hashem says, I don't need to be told to remember. However, what we're implying over here is that in the same way that Hashem asked us to remember, right? We ask Him, Hashem, you also remember. And part of your remembrance is not just to rebuild the Bet HaMikdash, but also to take revenge. So remember what they did. This is part of our prayer. So it's not that Hashem needs a reminder, it's just a way of saying to ourselves, this will happen. This will happen because Hashem does not forget, and He will take revenge from them. My question, however, is why is Edom here mentioned and not later? As you will see, Pasuk Chet and Tet, 8 and 9, refer to Bavel. Bavel was the one who destroyed the first temple, and Rome destroyed the second temple. That perhaps, to me, would make more sense. Mention what's going to happen to Babylonia first. Because according to our tradition, before Mashiach comes, Hashem will take revenge from those who destroyed the first temple, and then He will take revenge from those who destroyed the second temple. Well, it doesn't necessarily say which order, but I would think that perhaps it would be in the order of how it happened in the history. Babylonia was first, Rome was next. But here it mentions Edom first. Could it be that they did more terrible things, maybe? What they did was complete destruction in a way that was worse perhaps than what Babel did. But there's more to this. Anybody know what happened to Babel, to Babylonia? Babylonia was destroyed or taken over by the Persian Empire. Now, even though there's still a country today, Iraq, but initially at least, they already got their punishment. So here we're talking about an empire that has never been completely destroyed. That's Rome. Rome will be around till the end of days. Only Hashem will bring them down. So it could be, it mentions that First, because of the significance of Rome in relationship to Mashiach. This is coming soon. Because of what they did, because they were never punished. It could be various reasons why Rome is mentioned before Babylonia. Now let's look at the next two verses, verse 8 and 9. בת בבל, אשר דודה, אשר שישלם לך את גמולך שגמלת לנו. Babylon, who is destined to be laid waste, happy is he who will repay you in retribution for what you have inflicted on us. So even though I just translated Bat Bavel, as Babylonian, it says Bat Bavel in the Hebrew. Bat means the daughter of Bavel. Why call her the daughter of Bavel? Just call her Bavel. It's possible that it's talking about the descendants. Bat is the daughter. Future generation. It's not the same Bavel as back then. It's the ones who are living there today. So what we're being told over here is that there's a two-stage revenge of Bavel. There's the initial one, perhaps, that happened back then when the Persian Empire took over and laid them to waste, basically. That's why it says Sheduda, who's destined to be laid waste. It was laid waste. And it's talking about the idea of measure for measure. Ashrei sheishalem lach et gemulech shegamalt lanu. Right? Happy is he who will repay you in retribution for what you have inflicted on us. In other words, retribution. So there is something called measure for measure. And we will see that. So in that region of the world, there's going to be action. And there was already. So perhaps Pasuk Chet is talking about stage 1, and Pasuk Tet verse 9 is talking about stage 2, or either way, there's going to be two stages at least of retribution for what they did in the first temple. The reason why this happens, perhaps, or the reason why this is mentioned now, towards the end of the chapter, verses before Edom, as I said before, it could be Edom takes the center stage when Mashiach comes, of course, but also because it began the chapter talking only about Bavel, not about Edom. This chapter is about Bavel. So it began the chapter with Bavel, perhaps he finishes the chapter with Bavel too. That could be another reason why he puts Bavel at the end. So verse 9 says, Asher sheyochez v'nipetzet ololayich el hasala, happy is he who will seize and crush your infants against the rock. Didn't I tell you before? Cruel. Yeah. Crushed your infants against the rock. Do you recall anybody doing this? You can see pictures of what the Nazis did. They did this. It's exactly, not anyone would do this, by the way. Not every enemy would do this. Certain cruel enemies did exactly this. They crushed infants against the rock. Infants, little babies. So here, if you wonder why are they suffering so much, if you ever see a country that's really suffering, it could be that what they've done was something so terrible. Look what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah, the Torah says. Completely overturned, completely destroyed. You don't have to go to Sodom, just go to Pompeii. And by the way, today you don't have to travel to Pompeii. You can Google and you can go through the streets. You can see videos of what happened there. They've uncovered a lot of what was destroyed through the earthquake, through the volcano, through the ash, through fire that happened there. And look at the history books, and you will see that this happened not much after the destruction of the Second Temple. Look what happened to Lisbon. The city of Lisbon, the capital of Portugal, was almost destroyed by a major earthquake. A tsunami, I believe. Not too long after the Inquisition, or the expulsion that they had from Portugal. If you look closely, as I was saying before, at the history of those countries in Europe, and you will notice something incredible happened. Not too long ago, a few hundred years ago, the bubonic plague, the Black Plague. Do you know that millions of people died in that plague in Europe? Now they're talking about the coronavirus. Well, I don't know what that's going to go, what that's going to be like. How many are going to die from that. Hopefully it will be cured. It's terrible. People dying. It doesn't make a difference where. But that's a plague in a sense. And a lot of people can lose their life. And that has happened in the history. Look what's going on in Kenya now, Somalia, Eastern Africa. A tremendous invasion of locusts that they haven't seen for years. And they're poor. They barely have food. And now it's going to destroy the crops. And if you don't follow the news, you wouldn't know what's going on elsewhere about the major floods and fires that have affected other countries. And you wonder why. No, we don't know. No, I don't think anybody today is really in the position to identify the reason or the reasons why certain things happen, but we have to have clarity in this, that it happens for a reason, not for nothing. It's not just an act of Mother Nature, as they'd like to call it. No. This is all from Shemayim. So that is what we are being continuously reminded here through this chapter and other chapters in Tehilim and elsewhere, that there is measure for measure. There's an attribute of justice. So anyway, so what is happening today in Iraq, and what has been happening today, these days in Iraq, is all possibly related to some of the prophecies that have been said on Iraq, on that part of the world. All right. Kuf Lamed Chet, chapter 138. The segula for this chapter is ahava, love. I guess if you want to connect to someone who perhaps is not happy with you, you want to strengthen the bond, this chapter could help. This chapter is already more about David HaMelech describing how Hashem delivered on his promises to him. And perhaps the connection to the previous chapter is that divine providence that we mentioned. You see the Hashgacha. You see how Hashem delivered. He kept his promise. So even though the previous chapter was more about the promise of revenge, perhaps, this is better news. This is about keeping the promise to David HaMelech and, of course, to the Jewish people in the end of days. לדוד עודך בכל ליבי נגד אלוהים אזמרך. So this is by David. He composed it. I will thank you with all my heart. In the presence of princes, I shall praise you. So David HaMelech is talking about something that he said already before, how important it is to thank Hashem, to not take anything for granted. He suffered a lot. He had many, many enemies. Hashem kept his promise, gave him the melucha, the reign, the kingdom. And he says that I will share this thanks, his words of praise and thanks, neged Elohim. Here, Elohim means princes, important people. Let them be impressed by what I will share with them, by what I will say. Let them learn from that. That's the whole idea of doing something in public, is for people to learn from it. In this way, it becomes a big Kiddush Hashem. The name of God is sanctified. For yourself, you're going to thank yourself. Thank you, Hashem. It's very nice. It's good to always be aware of the good that Hashem has done for you. But you want to teach people too. So he says it more than once. I will do so in public, so they could also learn from me. Pasuk Bet. It's not just in words, I will do so in deeds as well. Ishtachaveh elecha al kodshecha ve'odeh shemecha al chazecha v'al amitecha ki gdalta al kol shemcha imratecha. I will bow toward your holy sanctuary. So here, he has in mind, hopefully one day, soon, the Bet HaMikdash will be rebuilt. You will keep that promise too. And this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to keep my promises, my vows. And that is to come and bow toward your holy sanctuary and praise your name. Odeh Shemecha, for what? Al Chazecha v'al amitecha, for your kindness and for your truth. So kindness, we understand that even though somebody may not deserve it sometimes, Hashem still is kind. Velamitecha is basically Hashem keeps his word, his truth. He basically will validate everything that he said will happen. But look at the last words. The last few words of this verse is something very special about the end of days. Ki gdalta al kol shimcha imratecha. You have exalted your word above all your names. Imratecha means your word. So this is more or less a description that what will happen in the end of days is igdalta. You will have outdone yourself, as we say in English. You will have done much more than we expected, than we were anticipated, than what you said will happen. It will be so great when Hashem actually delivers what he promised. It will be more than what we ever imagined. In other words, I'm looking forward to that day so I can bow and thank you, because at that point, it will be so much to thank you for. Now, David HaMelech does not only thank Hashem for being saved from his enemies, for being king, he's also thanking for something else that sometimes we don't even realize. It happens to every one of us. Look at verse number 3. B'yom karati v'ta'aneni tarhiveni b'nafshi oz. On the day I called you, on the day that I called out, you answered me. You emboldened me, or you strengthened me. Tarhiveni, you put strength in my soul. These last words, you put strength in my soul, a very, very special meaning. A lot of times people are distressed, people are sad, people are just down, feel helpless and discouraged. They need strength, they need motivation, they need encouragement. It's not so much being saved, it's not the money perhaps, it's a kind word. Tarhiveni b'nafshi oz is a very, very special, it's a special feeling. Imagine, the best I can describe it to, or compare it to, is being exhilarated in a great mood. All of a sudden, imagine you received great news, and that changed your mood completely from being down to being so happy. That's oz. The mood is very important. If a person is not in a good mood, he doesn't function well. We all know that. How do you feel in the morning when you get up? You didn't sleep enough. You're tired. You don't feel like going to work. So oz in the nefesh, strength in the soul, is a very important feeling. It's a powerful feeling. We need that strength. Otherwise, we don't feel right. So it's not just about health. It's about the nefesh feeling good about itself, feeling good about everything around it, feeling confident. Hashem gave him that too. Hashem not only answered his prayers, not only delivered him, not only protected him, he gave him oz, gave him that strength in the soul. I think that is very, very special feeling that he describes as in the word tarhiveni. Tarhiveni is a very rare word. It comes from the word rahab, which comes from the root harbe, which means a lot, but a lot of what? A lot of strength. So Hashem gave him that strength that he needed so that he can be confident and feel good about himself. Imagine being criticized, being attacked, being insulted, running for your life in danger. I mean, how does a person feel? Even the strongest person in the world feels anxious and nervous and fearful. So even though you have bitachon in Hashem, which is very, very good and important, you completely trust in Hashem, we're human beings. We need that oz, that strength to feel good, to be courageous, emboldened, to not be afraid of anyone. So Hashem gave him that feeling. All right, let's go on. Pasuk Dalet. Yoducha Adonai kol malchei haaretz ki shama'u mineficha. So at that point, when Mashiach comes, this is the end of days, it's not just me, it's everybody else too. Hashem, all the kings of the land will give thanks to you when they hear the words of your mouth. Which words of your mouth will they hear? So the rabbis talk about Aseret HaDibrot, they talk about the Ten Commandments being the words of Hashem, that they will have doubted whether Hashem said it or not. Maybe Moshe put it together. I mean, what's so special about those words, the Ten Commandments? The Ten Commandments are unique because in those commandments, Hashem does not only talk about himself. You should only have me as your God. Don't you dare take another God, right? Oh, any God would say that. No, Hashem says, Kabed avicha v'timecha, to honor your parents. We see that in the Ten Commandments there's something very special that an ordinary king, God, would not expect, would not say. So in other words, the Goyim will be impressed when they become exposed to the Torah, to the Bible, when they hear the words of Hashem. Later on, as we get closer to Mashiach, they will be much more impressed than now. Now they're too busy persecuting us, or they have been, right? Trying to sell their religion. But as we get closer to Mashiach and they see the truth, they will respect those words that Hashem said a lot more. and they will thank you. They will realize that you were behind the scenes all along. Pasuk Hey. V'yashiru b'darchei Adonai ki gadol kevod Adonai. At that point they will sing of Hashem's ways, for the glory of Hashem is great. At that point there will be a Kiddush Hashem, sanctification of Hashem's name. Right now, unfortunately, up until now, there has been a Chilul Hashem, a desecration of Hashem's name. In other words, because of the way they acted, those kings that oppressed us, because of what they did to us, in a way, they were disrespectful of God. Then, when Mashiach comes, or as we get closer, they will recognize Darchei Hashem a little bit better. They will realize that all of this was the ways of Hashem all along. It was He who manipulated everything. It was He, the driving force behind everything. So they will sing. They will sing because they will recognize this. And that's when Hashem's kavod, Hashem's honor will be great. Pasuk Vav. Kiram Adonai v'shafal yireh v'gavo v'merchak yida. For though Hashem is exalted, in this case the word exalted meaning that He's so far up in the heavens, so what if He's so far and so distant? V'shafal yireh, even from such a distance, He's able to see the lowly. He knows everything that's in this world. He created everything. He's aware of everything. So even though Hashem is exalted and is so far away, this is part of our emunah. Not everybody had this emunah, this faith of Hashem being involved in creation. They believed in God, but perhaps He's no longer around. He removed Himself. He's aware of everything. You can turn to Him, pray to Him. He actually listens. This was not something that every nation back then or even today can appreciate. Here He tells us, not only is He involved, He specifically will look down to the shafal, to those who are lowly. Now, lowly could mean those who are very poor, very miskenim, they have no help and they need Hashem's help, like orphans. It doesn't only mean that. Shafal could also mean somebody who's humble. Hashem pays more attention to those who are humble than to the other guy. Who's the other guy? At the second half of the pasuk, those who are gavoa, those who are arrogant, those who think highly of themselves. Hashem doesn't like them. How could you think highly of yourself if tomorrow you're going to be 6 feet under? You're going to be consumed by worms, and all the billions of dollars you have, you're not taking with you. So how could you ever think of yourself as something so great and arrogant? So Hashem hates, especially the arrogant. So you see the contrast here. He actually pays close attention to those who are lowly, and the gavoa mimerchak yida. He will castigate, He will punish. Yida means that He will basically distance Himself from them and punish those who are arrogant. Pasuk Zayin. Im elech bekerev tzara techayeni, alaf oivai tishlach yadecha v'toshi'eni. If I walk in the midst of distress, tzara, distress or trouble, I know for a fact that You will keep me alive. Techayeni. Alaf oivai tishlach yadecha v'toshi'eni yiminecha. Against the wrath of my enemies, stretch out your hand and let your right hand deliver me. Why say this at this point? Why does it belong over here? Very interesting idea. Since we're talking about Hashgacha, the more one's emunah is strong in the Hashgacha of Hashem, even if he's in some deep tzara, he's in Auschwitz. He says, I'm in the hands of Hashem, even in the darkness of the concentration camp. Techayeni, Hashem can still keep me alive. You know how many countless miracles there are of people that were close to death? I'll give you just one example. There's so many. I've read quite a few books. There's a story about a guy who was shot by the grave. They sometimes dug big graves for mass burial. So they were shooting. And this guy was shot too. And he fell in, but he wasn't killed. He was injured. So imagine he has all these dead bodies on top of him, but luckily they didn't yet put all the sand back to cover the grave. They did put some disinfectant or something there, lime. When it was dark, sun went down, everybody went away. They're not going to stay there because it's all dead. He got out and ran away and stayed alive. He survived. You know, all kinds of miracles. I mean, countless miracles. Even if you're bekerev tzara, you're in some sort of tzara tehayeni, Hashem has His ways of keeping people alive. Al af oivai tishlach yadecha. Against the wrath of my enemies, stretch out your hand. In other words, you'll take care of them. Af is the wrath, the anger. In other words, the real enemies. They're about to do something terrible wrong. They're about to hurt you. Al af tishlach yadecha, you will stretch out your hand and let your right hand deliver me. The right hand was rachamim, is the right hand. Sometimes people are in a tzara. In order to get out of a tzara, you need merits. You need rachamim. You need the right hand of Hashem. Because there's kitrugim. There's always accusation. Always, all the time. And I mentioned this more than once. When people are in danger, the ledger is open. The books are open. Should we make a miracle or not for him? Should we save his life or not? He's in danger. He's under the operating table. He's about to be operated on. It's a very, very serious surgery. You can easily go. Vashamayim, they said, okay, he's had a full life. You know, he's 68. That's pretty good. It's not 20. You know, yeah, that's what they're talking. The angels are talking. Okay, let him go. Extra miracle for him to save his life now, to extend it? What for? Sometimes the other angels will come and say, no, extend his life. He did this and he did that. So when a person is on the operating table, he's very, very sick, even at home, he's in danger, he's a soldier, any kind of situation which is a tzara, you should know that they're examining his deeds. So you don't have to wait for Rosh Hashanah. All those kinds of circumstances, they will examine and they will make a decision. But if you have the emunah in the Hashgacha of Hashem, and you say the words of David HaMelech, this could be helpful. This will hopefully give you that strength and the hope to continue to believe that Hashem can make a miracle. Whether He does or not is up to Him, but at least you will not despair. And the last pasuk is Hashem, complete your kindness on my behalf. Your kindness is forever. Hashem didn't stop being kind. People, He was kind once upon a time. And no, your kindness is forever. So therefore, do not forsake the work of your hands. We ask Hashem that He should continue to provide us with His Hashgacha. We are Maaseh Yadecha. We are, after all, the work of His hands. Even though the whole world is the work of His hands. But on Am Yisrael and the Jewish nation, He has demonstrated more than once His Hashgacha Klalit, His divine providence over the Jewish nation. Now, this Hashgacha Klalit for the Jew has also been Hashgacha Pratit for individuals, as I gave you now the example of the story of that individual who was saved in a miraculous way. So there's Hashgacha Klalit, divine providence affected the entire nation as a whole. There's also Hashgacha Pratit. Therefore, anybody who has gone through some miracle, we've said this before, experienced something like that, should talk about it, write a book about it, give a Seudat Hodaya, a meal of thanksgiving to Hashem, make the blessings that are necessary for that. Because people have to be reminded there is something called Hashgacha. Hashem is involved in our life. He protects us, and Bezrat Hashem, He will continue to perform many miracles for us. Amen.